a special episode of Emerald Echo, a Green Lantern podcast / vidcast now. As always, I'm your host, Adam, and with me is my co-host, Donnie, the Emerald enthusiast. Donnie, how's it going?
What's up, Lantern fans? It's Crib's personal hairdresser. It is the Emerald enthusiast.
It's such a special occasion that I've moved out of my traditional Batcave background motif and onto Oa. And normally on the Emerald Echo podcast, Donnie and I mainly focus on older issues.
Right. Hence the name Emerald Echo.
Yeah.
Yes. Echo from the past.
Yes. And so we've gone through, the origins of Hal, John, Jessica,
Simon,
Sinestro,
yes.
Phil Bova's favorite Simon, as you mentioned, and currently we're doing an extensive read through and review of the Kyle Rayner run as Green Lantern.
Yes.
But there is a brand new Green Lantern title written by Geoffrey Thorne and drawn by, I think the first issue was drawn by Dexter Soy. Am I right on that?
Yeah, it's Dexter Soy and Marco Santucci.
Yes. And again, normally we'd cover this as part of a grouping of comics on the DC Comics Chronicles, which you can find where, Donnie?
You can find the DC Comics Chronicles on YouTube. That is the Multiverse Musings Vidcast. And you can also find us on iTunes and Podbean, the Emerald Echo podcast. You can find a Flash of Two Mics, as well as a plethora of other podcasts covering the DC and Marvel universes.
Well said. But again, because issue 1 is a special kind of thing, and it's a new Green Lantern issue, and it's the first #1 that I'm covering, technically, of an ongoing run that I'm covering with Donnie. I mean, the Grant Morrison thing was always meant to be a limited run, so this is the first ongoing #1 that I'm covering on a podcast or vidcast as it's happening. So I thought, that was a special occasion. And Donnie's got that nice room filled with Green Lantern paraphernalia. That why not, show it off and celebrate a new Green Lantern #1. Further issues of the series will probably be explored on the DC Comics Chronicles. But for this one, we said let's do a solo special episode, and here we are. So, Donnie, there was much fanfare and internet, how can I put this politely?
Internet banter, internet arguing.
Yeah, banter, arguing, freakouts over what would this be, how's it going to treat certain characters, etc., etc. Now we know based off of #1, and we can talk about all that. So, as you are apt and so good at doing, give us a little bit of a breakdown on what exactly happens.
Well, this takes place after the Infinite Frontier #0. We have talked about that before. And let me just say a few things to preface this. Geoffrey Thorne, the writer here, he really gets John Stewart. I've got to say, I mean, this is very much the John Stewart that I have known since the 80s. And there are a lot of past elements here from the Green Lantern comics that will be very familiar. One of the things that I immediately was drawn to is that John is referred to by the Guardians here as the bridge. The bridge between, the humans and the Guardians. Now, if you remember, I don't know if everyone has read this. I think Geoffrey Thorne is referencing the Mosaic title from the early 90s. Now, in issue 18 of that, John actually swallows his ring, and that kind of coupled with his experiences gives him the powers of a Guardian. Now, eventually he lays that down, obviously, and I can't go too much into that. But I think that's what they're mentioning here is that John, with those past experiences, is a little bit more than human. That he's especially special. And so they call him, again, the bridge here. And I really like that concept that John is somebody who's so unique that he's been entrusted with the leadership of the Corps. And he's very important in this new omniverse that DC has set up.
It's funny because when the issue mentioned all that, I'm like, I gotta ask Donnie about this because, full disclosure, I haven't read Mosaic. So I wouldn't have been necessarily aware of that. So I was like, what exactly, when did that happen?
That was the early 90s. It is, I'll put this out there, I have to. It's difficult to find. Obviously, the writer has been extremely controversial since then, and DC rarely mentions that. That's why I don't think, if Geoffrey Thorne had this in mind, I don't think he mentioned that by name. But it's also an important part of John Stewart's history, so it's hard to not touch on that.
Yeah, okay. Now, was this, just to give myself some kind of more clarification, was the Mosaic story / book specifically focused on John, or was it?
Yes, it was John basically being put in charge of this world with all these alien civilizations and like creating this harmonious, perfect world with all of these various alien cultures.
Okay, cool. The title makes sense. Yeah. So good. I'm glad I have some background on what the heck they were talking about when they were calling John the bridge.
The bridge, yeah. Now, maybe I'm reading too much into that. Maybe just because of my extensive Green Lantern past, I'm looking at that and saying, maybe not. Maybe that was just Geoffrey Thorne's way of saying John is special.
Yeah. Well,
but he seems to be a student of comics. I mean, he said in the past he owns between 30,000 and 50,000 comics. So the guy knows
Geoffrey Thorne will comment below and clarify if he wants what he was thinking.
Yeah, sure.
So feel free to let us know, Jeff, if that's in fact what you were going for or not with that. But
another thing I'd like to touch on too is a lot of people saw the main cover to this and they thought that it was going to focus on Kelly Quintella, the Teen Lantern. And Geoffrey Thorne does set up a very interesting side story with her, but this is not her story. Yeah. And so you don't need to worry about this kind of descending into just being about her.
Well, since you brought her up.
Sure.
I will say it was written very well. Her kind of, her demeanor, her attitude towards, what all that's happening. It felt very true to how a teen, or in this case, given her age, preteen, the kind of attitude and reaction they would have. It felt very genuine.
Yes.
And I thought that John was a focus, was the main focus, but I think Geoffrey Thorne does a great job of sort of balancing, the different lanterns that we see in this and sort of giving them each sort of a bit of a spotlight.
Yes.
So I thought the pacing and things of that nature, in terms of which lantern and when to focus on them, was on point. I was really happy with that. And then the whole thing with the Guardians hosting a.
This is the United Planets Conclave.
Yes, so it's like the state sort of what they're sort of meeting about is whether to have OA be part of the United Nations of Planets.
Yes.
And
excuse me, did I say United Planets Conclave? Yeah, I keep saying United Nations too. United Planets Conclave. Yes.
Yeah. So, right. And I like that sort of that's a thing that they brought in from, that's something that Brian Michael Bendis was leaning heavily on in his Superman run and Legion of superheroes. But it makes sense that the Green Lanterns would be a part of this kind of thing, given their,
given their status,
status in the universe and being the police force of, the space and things of that nature, and other worlds and things of that nature. So it seems very appropriate that they be here, and want to be a part of this conglomerate.
Well, that's actually the focal point of this book. Is the United Planets actually have their own police force, and that's the United Planets Brigade. Yeah. And we even see one of the representatives here. That is Amira Collin. She's she's a Thanagarian. She is a Jerkosaurus, by the way, to Hal and John both. But she does turn up to fight with the Green Lanterns when things go wrong. This, we're getting the United Planets now, and the whole crux of this book is deciding whether Oa is going to be part of that and whether the Green Lantern should exist.
Yeah.
What's their role in this new paradigm?
Well, my answer is yes, they definitely should exist, obviously. So there's my vote.
Because there's a more important green than even Green Lantern energy, and that's the dollars. DC wants dollars, they need to keep publishing Green Lantern.
Yeah, agreed. Are you going to bust out into $1 Million Man routine where you start saying everybody's got a price and laughing maniacally? Is that what you're going to? Okay. I guess that's very well done. But no, it's funny because our Thanagarian representative, that whole exchange between her and John and by extension Hal, reminded me a lot of the early days of the Justice League animated series. Because remember, at the beginning of that, John and Shaira's relationship and encounters were a little bit contentious. They had, there was a little bit of a, you know what I mean?
Yes. I do remember.
And then they, through time, that relationship developed, nicely. And over the period of time, and so I got a feeling, it gave me as the kids would say, give me the feels for what I remember from the Justice League cartoon.
Right. Well, and I do need to put in there though, a lot of people saw the early artwork for Amira and they assumed that it was Shaira.
Well, it makes sense.
Some people were disappointed, but Geoffrey Thorne has actually pointed out, he's like, hold on, I think Shaira is going to be in this later on.
Yeah. So I wonder. Could they be setting up, a bit of a relationship type of thing?
He could. Although obviously, there's one point here where, both. It's actually Hal's energy projection. It's not actually Hal on Oa. We see that he's back on Earth, but he and John have a
tool for social distancing. I might add.
Yeah, exactly. See, they are controlling COVID on Oa. But it's funny because. Hal puts his head down after they talk to her, and he's like, Thanagarians. And John's like, every single one of them. And I'm like, well, you might like one in the future. I'm just guessing.
Yeah. So I'm not going to be shipping anything just yet because, again, we'll see if Shaira comes into play or if maybe he develops feelings for this, as you called her, a Jerkosaurus. Not to be confused with Luchasaurus, which is a wrestler, but different. Right. Anyway, but we'll see if there's any relationship shenanigans that eventually develop. But for now, it just brought back some callbacks to the animated series and the relationship in Justice League. Now, one of the big sort of concerns that was being bandied about when the early previews and information started coming out about this book was, some of the naysayers, Geoffrey Thorne is going to abandon, everything that has been set up over the last what can we say, a decade and a half, 2 decades now, and
Mm-hmm.
and you know all that BS about he doesn't like um, Hal and all that mumbo jumbo. Clearly, two things. I thought he wrote Hal very much in a manner that to me seems like Hal being Hal,
Mm-hmm.
doing Hal things. I mean,
Yeah.
there wasn't anything awkward. He didn't make him a Brooklyn Brawler jobber type of character. You know, he's not the Brooklyn Brawler of Oa. So again, and that's no disrespect to the Brooklyn Brawler. There's a place for jobbers in the wrestling industry, but that's neither here nor there. But you know what I mean.
And by the way, all those rumors about the Red Lanterns torturing Hal to death and killing him did not happen.
Yeah,
that was ridiculous.
Didn't happen yet, and I don't know. Again, I don't know where these people get this thing. Again, if we're gonna go digging up, you know, 2-year-old tweets, like really, somebody can, as a fan, he's allowed to like or dislike whoever he wants. That him being a professional writer, that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to affect the way he writes a certain character. So
we all have our likes and our dislikes, and he said, "I can write Hal Jordan while not being a particular fan of his."
Yeah, exactly.
And I believe him. Yeah. For those of you who don't know, Geoffrey Thorne has been around in entertainment for a long, long time.
Yeah,
he knows how to tell a story. So
he's not some what was the saying? Wet behind the ears when you're fresh out of when you're new to something, isn't that
right?
I don't know all the saying.
Exactly. He's no poozer. He's a veteran. You know?
Yeah, that's right. Exactly.
Believe it or not, I actually found a video of him singing a Christmas carol too. That was awesome.
Well, I mean, maybe in the future when we do a Christmas episode, if he ever wants to come on and sing a Christmas carol, by all means, we'll have a Green Lantern Christmas and a special episode. But as a reader that came on board, really, like as I told you, I came on board full stop in just prior to Rebirth. Green Lantern Rebirth.
Okay.
And my experience with Kyle started with the trades. I wasn't a single issue collector back then. The good old days where I cared about what was in my wallet. Now those days are gone. But you know, and then as I finished reading the first volume of Kyle, that's when Rebirth kind of became a thing. So I started picking up with Johns' run and all that. Yeah. And the fact that we saw the Sinestro Corps and the Red Lanterns, and they mentioned the Blue Lanterns, and so. And
now that's interesting too. I gotta say, with this new Omniverse, they make mention of like the universe, this new Omniverse, like reality reknitting itself. The Blue Lanterns were gone. They were killed by Relic. The only one surviving, of course, was Saint Walker. But John the one comment seemed to allude to the fact that they were still around. Yeah. So have they been brought back as part of this new Omniverse? Possibly.
Yeah, right. But I just like that, those little touches, and we see the Red Lanterns, we see the Sinestro Corps War. We'll touch on that in a second. They talk about the Book of Oa. This is all stuff that since what was it, 04, 05 when Rebirth started.
Yes.
This is all stuff that to me is
05. I believe it was the end of 05, actually. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is my main canon for Green Lantern for me, because that's when I really got into it. So to see that stuff is referenced and mentioned, and not completely obliterated and forgotten, that makes me I'm happy about that. Again, it wasn't a deal breaker that it had to be there for me to enjoy this book, but the fact that it's there shows to me that all these preconceived notions about Geoffrey Thorne and how he was going to write this title can just be thrown out the window or used as toilet paper, because they have no basis in actual fact. Yeah.
Let me point out here too, we actually see Hal give a status report, and he's with the Justice League. You see him with Superman and Naomi.
Yeah. Oh,
You
yeah.
actually see Jessica. She is headed towards Sector 0123, which is actually, I believe, where she was in the Future State
That
story.
sounds like a really bad internet password.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's what the president used in Spaceballs, but I digress.
That's probably what the past president that just left the office used as well. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. Yeah.
Oh boy, there's a lot of jokes there, but that's not why we're here.
I'm right. You know I'm right. Let's just move on.
Let's just move on. I do want to say, and believe it or not, Kyle Rayner does make a cameo in this book too. He's putting down a border skirmish in the Vega system, and it's interesting to note that's where the Omega Men operate. Now, I kind of don't think that they're going to send him back to the, being involved in the Omega Men, but I guess it's possible. Yeah, that was Tom King's book, so I did like that story.
Now you're going to make me read another Tom King book. You know me and Tom King have a very tumultuous relationship, right? It's I like some of his stuff. I don't, the Bad Cat is not forever unless it's Batman Returns. But
well, that there was a lot of good. That was a space drama too, a little bit darker than what we're reading here, but the Omega Men.
We'll get to it at one point because it has Kyle, right? So yeah,
sure. We'll get to it eventually, but yeah. Back to the task at hand.
Yes.
And I do want to say while we're on this part, it opens up with the big battle, and then it kind of takes a step back to 2 hours before. I think my favorite image of this is Hal communicating with John through his ring, and he says, "John, if you need me, I'm a hyper jump away or a boom tube or whatever it takes." And John says, "Same to you, brother."
Right.
That's the four corpsmen, the Green Lanterns operating as a unit, and their affection for one another. That's one of the things that I really dig about modern Green Lantern comics. And Geoffrey Thorne gets that brotherhood here. So I really, really like that. So
yeah, no, it was a great line. And it's good to see. Again, I wish, the fandom of Green Lantern would act like the heroes that they supposedly love. Because if they did, there wouldn't be this bickering or infighting within the fandom itself. And when I saw that, I'm like, yeah, see, that's the way it's supposed to be. Now,
Well, and I also put out a little bit of a challenge on Twitter, and I'm by no means when I say this am I saying that comic fans are better than animated fans, because most of us, we take in all of it. Yeah. But I know some people who they got exposed to Green Lantern through the animated series, which is great. I mean, I'm talking about the Justice League series. Yeah. Which is great. But that's the only thing they know about Jon Stewart, and they've never bothered to go out and support the character in any way. And I'm like, look, here's your opportunity now. Jon Stewart front and center. Go out and buy this. You can
jump in on the ground floor. Yeah.
Exactly. Go out and maybe if you're not interested in comics, you've got to know somebody who would be. Put some money in Geoffrey Thorne's pocket. Put some money in Marco Santucci and Dexter Soy's pockets.
Like, guys, we want DC to publish more Green Lantern books, and if you want that, you got to support the current Green Lantern run that's occurring now. So I'm just saying, give it a shot, and it may not have your favorite guy in there, but give it a shot. If you want to see your favorite guy again, in his own book or get more of a play in the DC universe, you have to vote with your wallet. And so, to me, that's why I've never gotten these complaints of, well, all DC cares about is Batman. Well, DC cares about money. So if you put money in their pocket regarding where Green Lantern is concerned, well, then guess what? You're going to get more Green Lantern. It's simple economics.
Speaking of money, I really want now, in the worst way, a figure of John in his dress uniform.
Yeah, that looked very cool.
He even said, Kilowog makes fun of him for it, which I think his was a lot better looking than Kilowog looked like a big Christmas tree. Yeah. But John said I based it on Kryptonian dress attire, so I really like this.
Yeah, because the Kryptonians were at the forefront. Superman and John were at the forefront of the United Planets, right? You almost had me say United Nations of Planets again. Damn it. Donnie, come on. I have problems with titles. Now you got to add this thing. this roadblock in my way. But just I want to comment on before we get to the art, because I think you could talk about how great the art looks, but I really dig Simon's interaction with Kelly, is it?
With Kelly, yeah, Kelly Quintella, Teen Lantern.
Like that he was I don't want to say babysitter is the wrong word, but you know what I'm...
Well, he was kind of looking after her. For those of you who don't know, the Guardians they're kind of putting her through her paces, trying to understand the gauntlet, which we do get confirmation that it's not Krona's gauntlet. Right. It's also not Owen in Origin, not connected to the central power battery. So it's very interesting. That's kind of the mystery that Geoffrey Thorne sets up for the gauntlet here. And the Guardians want it off of her. They want to dissect it. They want to study it. And she's having none of it. Right. And so Simon is that, John is trying to calm them.
Jonathan Stewart, you're getting really professional now with that.
And so, yeah, Simon he's kind of hanging out with Kelly. You see them go get a snack. And they do have a lot of pleasant interactions there. I kind of like that friendship that seems to be forming.
It's kind of like a almost, I could see it developing into like a Big Brother type of scenario.
Sure.
And it makes sense that they would pair him up with her or her up with him, because relatively speaking, he's still a newer Green Lantern, right?
We haven't seen him in a while, and so I was happy to see him back.
And I'm sure Phil was overjoyed. But no, I just like there's you could buy the camaraderie there, because again, they're the newer kids on the block, right, so to speak.
Yeah. And
it's funny because when she starts freaking out because they try to take the gauntlet, and she throws like a tantrum.
Yes. And she seems to be saying some not so nice phrases in Spanish.
Yeah, I wanted to look those up to see what she was actually saying.
Well, one of them I believe was, you will not take my gauntlet. I don't think she actually curses, but yeah.
Right.
Interesting.
But it's funny because I don't know who says it, if it was Simon or John. Like, what's happening here? And one of them goes, "Well, this is a teen throwing a tantrum." and then it's like, well, actually tween, but
Right, yeah.
but it's funny because John to Kelly, if John was put in the same role that Simon was, John to me would be more like the father figure, the authoritative father figure. So I don't think she'd warm up. I mean, warm up to a degree, but she wouldn't be as receptive to him because, again, there's that parental, authoritative figure.
Yes. Whereas
with Simon, she has that more of that camaraderie. So I think their pairing, to me, works quite well, at least in this initial phase. And I love her reaction to that alien that she was having a conversation with about the gem world.
Yes,
And he's like, "Wait, you're not scared of me?" And he's like, "Why? You look like a wedding dress, you look like a wedding dress or something along those."
Yeah, Fuzix, and she says like a wedding dress but alive. Yeah. So the gem world does come into play here. Yeah. So
her reaction, I think, again, it just felt very, very honest and true to what a teenager would say.
Yeah. And I want to point out here too, we talk about belonging, so you see on a small scale, how does Kelly fit into this? But on a larger scale, the United Federation of Planets, they are voting on whether to accept Oa into the United Federation of Planets. Mm. And that's what this conclave is about. And I really like the voting scene, not only for the art, but it also reminded me of, the Congress in Star Wars.
Yeah.
Which I like those scenes. I mean, and not everybody did. That was a complaint about the prequels. But this is space drama in a multifaceted way. And that's what I like about this, because that should be, the backdrop for Green Lantern. Not that you can't have the occasional story that's grounded, that's maybe centering around one lantern, but if you want a good flavor of Green Lantern, you're going to get it right here.
Yeah. You mentioned Star Wars. A lot of this issue reminded me of Star Trek as well.
Okay.
You know, those kind of meetings and discussions and voting, and it had a very Star Trek feel to me, and I'm a huge Star Trek fan, so you know, throw a little bit of that flavor into Green Lantern, and I'm on board. And you can imagine my enjoyment of the Star Trek Green Lantern crossovers.
Oh yes, yes, I really like those.
We'll have to review those at some point.
Oh, no doubt. But we see here that not everyone wants Oa in the Federation. We see that the Daxamites, surprise, surprise, they're xenophobic, that they vote down on Oa. And we also see that, surprise, surprise again, Sinestro and New Korrigar, they vote to deny Oa entrance into the Federation.
I'll tell you, I fell out of my seat when he gave that vote. I was so shocked. It's funny because his arrogance is like, I think he was talking to one of his fellow members or whatever, but he's like, "Oh, I was the best of them," and he's like, he was doing a Mr. Perfect where he's patting himself on the back, like I was so good and blah blah blah, and he's crap talking on the Guardians. Now, one of the things I want to mention about the Guardians, it seems like because we've seen over the last decade and a half that they're a very very what's the word I'm looking for? They're very controlling.
Mm-hmm.
They can be very duplicitous.
And some of those mistakes, when they're talking at the end there, the male Guardian, and I don't think the Guardians are actually ever named. If I did miss a name here, but the male Guardian even acknowledges some of the past mistakes of the Guardians. Now, are we talking about the massacre of Sector 666? Are we talking about, the rise of the Third Army? I'm not sure if that is in play here, if that's what Thorne is referencing. Right. But those are some of the things where you can go back and look and see that the Guardians haven't always been benevolent.
Right. So, but I get a sense that they've learned from their mistakes, right? Like the way he was talking, the way that Guardian was talking, it seems like they realized that, look, we've done some, shady crap back in the day. Yep. We realized that was a mistake. We just want to be unified and want to be part of a better way forward. So,
and again, you mentioned the Sinestro Corps here. I mentioned, I made a joke at the top of the program about being Cribb's hairdresser, and you see Cribb here, you see Mace, you see Lisa Drack, and again, in their dress Sinestro Corps uniforms, which I like, by the way. Not everybody did. But, quite a few characters here that we haven't seen in a while, and, that I welcome back. So
Yeah. And then there was an attack.
Yes, there was an attack.
So, spoilers, the Lanterns get voted in.
Mm-hmm.
And then just as there's some form of celebration, we get an attack.
Yes, we get attack, and that is actually from the gem world that we just referenced here. Yes. There are like 4 magic wielders that come through this portal, and as the vote is going on to whether or not to accept Oa into the Federation, they attack, and they are after the mystic energy of the Starheart, or a part of that type of energy that is within the core of Oa. And they unleash this like tentacled energy creature that feeds off of emotion.
Yeah.
So, what did you think of that?
I thought that was fascinating to see, an entity that feeds off of emotion. So it's kind of like the best solution to fight against it. And you see this is to not use your power ring.
Yeah. Well, you know what that reminded me of too. That actually reminded me of the end of Stephen King's It, the movie version, not necessarily the book version. At the end of that, where they depower Pennywise by no longer fearing him. What John does here, you see John tell all the Lanterns to kind of power down, and that gives this beast has nothing to feed off of.
Yeah. Yeah.
So he's able to outthink the situation again.
And it goes back to something that Geoffrey Thorne was playing with in the Future State stuff, where it's like the lanterns are more than just a ring.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
And John even says that. He said, you know, we're not just the rings.
Yeah. So I really like that. And then there is a lantern an Owen in the midst of the fighting. One of the Guardians gets gunned down, and that's how we end off the issue.
Well, and a couple things I want to say there too. Yeah. Again, spoilers. You know, if you don't want at this point, you probably shouldn't be watching or listening if you're concerned about spoilers. But I couldn't help but notice that the arrow that was fired at that Guardian was yellow, and Sinestro seemed to be kind of smirking. And I'm like, I'm like, okay, what, you know, it definitely wasn't related to the attack, because we saw that the outside attack, or at least I don't think so, that the magic wielders, they were angry at the Guardians because, of course, the Guardians, millions of years ago, you know, they gathered all this like magical energy and into this orb that was the Starheart. And so they were magic wielders, and so they were angry at, the Guardians kind of, taking all the magic away from them.
Yeah.
What happens after that, is that connected or not? I'm not sure. So.
Yeah, well, you're right. It's intriguing that the arrow was yellow.
Yeah.
And, I mean, Sinestro taking pleasure out of that doesn't shock me.
Yeah.
But does he have a deeper involvement in it? That's the question.
I mean, the assailant does say free the heart, but I'm like, this seems, he seems a lot different than the magic wielders. And I'm like, okay, is this someone else behind him?
Yeah.
Or is this simply part of the original plan? I don't know.
Well, we're gonna have to wait and see. But it definitely a cool cliffhanger, and kind of a shock in the way that it ended, because it seemed like they had the situation handled. I'm like, oh, good, they got voted in, and it's going to end up on a positive note. But then again, Geoffrey Thorne did say, people were going to die in this run. So he certainly lived up to that promise. But yeah, a good shock value, I'd say, for that ending.
Mm-hmm.
Let's comment a little bit on the art. What were some of your favorite pages?
Well, obviously, I talked about the dress uniform that John had on. I really like that. I like the way Simon was drawn and colored. I like that his uniform, you see kind of it's kind of trimmed in energy, the green sections. I really like that. The projection of Hal, you could definitely tell that he wasn't there.
Yeah.
I like how that was drawn. And there was a lot to like here. There's a lot of complicated space backdrops. And again, that's why you read Green Lantern. You want that. So, what were some of your favorites?
I don't read Green Lantern to spend time in Hal's kitchen. That's for sure.
Well, he and Green Arrow had some interesting kitchen.
Or Kyle's refrigerator.
Oh, well, yeah. That's gonna
cause some problems, I'm sure.
That's
I'm sure I'll be getting the hate mail. Yeah. Come on, I had to. It's in an episode being edited. I had to reference it.
Yeah. Well, and also too, the magic wielders from the Gem World. That was also really very nicely colored, very nicely drawn. So
yeah, for me, I did like the ceremonial. The pages where it shows the lanterns in the ceremonial garb. I dug that.
Go ahead, sir.
The opening page where it's like, it opens on a big seeming battle sequence. There's that page where it's like, where John tells Simon, watch your six. And you see them like back to back, and they're fighting together. I really dug that.
I also like to pay. I gotta say, when they're having the vote, you get to see pay a fell from a worm's eye view, and I thought that was a really interesting perspective there because it gives you, kind of the illusion of her floating. I thought that was really cool.
Yeah.
So
I dug it, and the sort of the HAL hologram construct to show that he was not actually there. Like, it really sells the point that okay, he's in the scene, but he's not physically present. And you got to use the right amount, the right shading and texture of green to sell that. Otherwise,
very much so. Yeah.
Otherwise, it could look like like he was there. So that's why you got to point.
Yeah, it kind of just wreathed in green, and that's not what happened. So here's this is the main book.
Yeah.
This is the one why I think everybody was saying, oh, it's going to be all about
Donnie.
Kelly.
Let's now fess up now, Donnie. How many covers did you get? Come on.
I'm still looking for the third one, and I was just getting ready to say this is my favorite. This is one of the variants. I don't have the other variant yet. That's the really rare one, but I am going to be looking for that this weekend.
That's Brian Hitch, right?
Yeah. Is this the Hitch cover? I'm not sure. Yeah. But this is my favorite cover of. This is even more favorite than the other variant. So
it's badass. I love it.
Yeah. Oh man.
No, and the other.
Look at all these lanterns in the background.
Oh, that's great. It's. Come on, that's your computer background, Donnie. You know that. I know that behind that computer screen is that image. But
if you're tuning in for the first time, he's talking about all of my collectibles here. So
yeah, which let's be honest, half of those I'm gonna steal at some point.
This is my central power battery. So.
It's a foregone conclusion. Half of those I'm stealing. But no, I also liked like I said, it was a quieter image of John, the hologram of Hal, and the Thanagarian representative of the brigade of the United Planets.
Yes. Just
flying together, having a conversation. That quiet image with the three of them, though, it was so detailed, so beautiful. But yeah, every battle sequence. This was just there's so many. It's so hard to single out a specific page because they were all so good. Like when you have the two kind of top tier artists that we have working on this book, it's so hard to single out just one page. So
what I have to say too, a lot of the background's very important because again, when the idea of this is this conclave to kind of decide how the new political system is going to work within the Omniverse, it's very important to show all these alien races in the background. And there was a lot of very complicated, very greatly populated panels, and it gave you that perfect, vibe of this is something massive that is happening.
And it was nice to see like a political thing, albeit fictional, a political discussion happening, where none of the main, proponents are talking about fake news and any mumbo jumbo like that. So it was kind of nice. I'm like, oh, okay.
Well, like I said, we did have our own Jerkosaurus, though. Like I said, she was Thanagarian. Yeah, she was.
Yeah, but she was nowhere near as bad as some real life politicians that
that's
we've encountered over the last 4 years. So
however, again, I gotta say, when the chips were down, she was there fighting with John. So
yeah, she did what she needed to do, and hey, we'll see. Like I said, I don't think we've seen the last of her or possibly Shahira, as Geoffrey has alluded to. But overall.
And I've said too, Kelly Quintella's one of the few characters in the Green Lantern mythos that I'm not sold on yet. I like this idea, though, that there's a mystery with the gauntlet. Hopefully he develops her in such a way to make her, hopefully in a year I'll look back on this and I'll say, yeah, I like her here. I like the fact that she's here.
I like the fact that she's in training, and it's not.
Yes.
It's not following the Arrow syndrome where everybody's a Roy Harper after two training sessions with Oliver, right? Man, can he wield that bow and arrow like,
Yeah.
So I'm glad that, yes, she has this gauntlet, but she's no superstar. She's not an expert.
Yeah, she does hold her own. She does hold her own in one panel, but Geoffrey Thorne has said, he's like, I don't write genius characters. She's not coming in here and showing all the adults how it's done.
Yeah.
So I think that I really appreciate what he's done so far with her. So
yeah.
So that's your task, Geoffrey Thorne, is make me like this character. So
yeah, right. I'm sure he's going to work extra hard just on that, just for you, Donnie. But no, overall, I couldn't be happier with this debut issue.
Yeah. Now, we didn't get to see Joe Mullane yet. I'm really interested to hear see. I'm interested to see how quickly that develops. The scene between this and the scene with her on Oa when she's accusing Hal of where were you when the battery was smashed. So
now, do you think her and John will butt heads because they're both so?
That's an interesting question. Yeah,
they're both leaders. They're both
That's a good question, yeah. Being that she has kind of operated mostly on her own, I could see her coming in and John saying, well, this is not the way we do it around here.
Yeah.
And her, having some procedural differences. So, yeah.
They're going to be like the Christopher Maloney and Mariska Hargitay of the Green Lantern franchise. Those two.
I will say this, though, and that's another thing that Geoffrey Thorne has said, is that he called Far Sector a perfect comic book, and he said that he has no intention of, using her in a way that would be disrespectful to N.K. Jemison's writing. So.
Yeah, that book is great, and that's another one we'll eventually get to, for sure.
Definitely, yeah.
But
so,
in terms of the starting point of a new era for Green Lantern, I'm 100% all in on this.
Mm-hmm.
I loved it. So I guess we can go ahead and rate this thing for story and art. So go ahead, Donnie.
You know what? I have to say, story, I'm going to give it a 5. I mean, as far as world building goes, looking at a new era, you're talking about a 5. I don't know what else Geoffrey Thorne could have done. As far as art goes, I'm going to call that a 5 too. There was not much to dislike. And again, I want to point out that this is supposed to be a big event. We're talking about the political structure of the Omniverse being stripped down and built from the ground up. And you definitely got that from, as intricate and complicated as a lot of these panels were, you definitely got that vibe from this book. So,
yeah. For me, writing is also a 5. The story, again, it set up a new status quo while, sort of giving nods to past history at the same time. I think it had a good dynamic in terms of the grouping of characters, which characters interacted, how they interacted. And I thought the pacing was on point. And again, the ending was a shocker to me.
Yeah.
I didn't expect to get to see a Guardian mowed down, at the end of issue 1. Yeah. So,
you talk about pacing. I really like the fact that it opened in the middle of this battle and then took a step back. So it's like Geoffrey Thorne really understands the intricacies of how to tell a story like that.
In the sense of, he starts off with a big moment, big action scene or whatever,
right?
And then 24 hours earlier or whatever the case may be.
Yeah, and then you get the intro, and then it steps back into the beginning of the story. Yeah,
I know when TV shows do that, it bugs my parents because they're like, what do they have to go back for? Confused. But I think it doesn't bother me. Yeah. So the story, full marks, and the art again is a 5 as well. Just beautiful imagery.
This story is called "The Source of Peace," by the way.
Yeah, well, a lot of fighting.
Yeah.
In trying to gain that peace, but yeah, the art was great. The biggest compliment I can give is that I can't single out a favorite page because they were all so good. I will say, when New Corrigar made their entrance. Man, did they remind me of the NWO, just sauntering in there like, just
yeah.
Can we just call them the KWO, the Corrigar World Order?
By the way, Dexter is back too. I noticed that. He looks more humanoid.
I have a cat allergy, so I can't say he's my favorite.
Well, he looks more humanoid than we're used to seeing him in the past. So, thought that was interesting too.
Indeed, yeah. So great stuff. I'm looking forward to more.
Yes.
To Geoffrey Thorne and the entire team, well done. I'm hooked, and so is Donnie by the sounds of things. And we will be with you for this ride, and we can't wait for issue 2.
Yeah.
But Donnie, that brings this episode to a close. If people want to discuss with you about Green Lantern, past, present, and future, where can they do that?
You can find me on Twitter as the Emerald Enthusiast. Also, check out my YouTube channel where I do Green Lantern product reviews. Let's talk comics. Let's talk Green Lantern.
Awesome. And you can find me at Adam_LeafsFan on Twitter. That's my personal Twitter, where I mainly talk about hockey, nerd stuff. If you want just the show Twitter, where you'll see links to these episodes, I'll talk to you on there as well if somebody asks me a question or makes a comment. It's at MMNPDC. We have a Facebook page, which will probably be below in the YouTube description. Click on that. Ask for permission to join the group. I'll add you, and we can continue the conversation there. But until next time, remember that the Green Lanterns do belong, and they are forever. From the first conclave of the United Planets to the last. So long, everybody.
So long, everyone.